So today we're talking about No King protests, a topic that is catching rapid fire in the U.S. Something that may seem like it's come straight out of a dystopian movie. Tens of thousands of Americans on the streets protesting their own president, calling him a king. Yes, you heard that right. On June 14th, which happens to be both Flag Day in the United States and President Donald Trump's birthday, millions of Americans across all 50 states poured into the streets with a single, defiant message: no kings. But what led to these protests? Why are people comparing President Trump to a monarch? What role do immigration raids, federal troops, and state defiance play in all this? Let's break it down, logically, clearly, and without any bias. Well, No King's Day wasn't just a random protest. It was a symbolic, coordinated movement across America, especially Southern California, against what many see as President Trump's authoritarian overreach. Inspired by the spirit of 1776, when the United States broke away from British monarchy, these protesters claim Trump is disregarding democratic norms, using military power against his own citizens, and targeting immigrant communities without cause. It all started with massive immigration raids authorized by the Trump administration. Over the past 9 days, federal agents detained hundreds of undocumented immigrants, mostly in and around Los Angeles. The Trump administration claims these are dangerous criminals, but protesters say many were nonviolent individuals whose only offense was lack of documentation. So if we see technically, then President Trump is doing the right thing. He is throwing out people from the U.S. who entered the U.S. illegally, and people who are overstaying their visas. But now the problem is that the number of illegal people has reached too high, and in the past, nobody really took these kinds of actions, and not at such intensity. Democrats and Republicans both have used these people as their vote banks according to their need. And now suddenly President Trump wants to throw millions of these people out of the U.S. Some of them don't even know their original country because they've been living in the U.S. for generations, but they never got citizenship. So the situation is very complex. Even people with legal visas and green cards are reportedly afraid, as many families are mixed status, meaning some are citizens and some are not. The result? Widespread panic, even among lawful residents. Now, this is where the situation escalated. President Trump deployed hundreds of U.S. Marines and thousands of National Guard troops to cities like Los Angeles, not at the request of local officials, but by federal order. This is extremely rare and extremely controversial. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and California Governor Gavin Newsom had no direct control over these deployments. In fact, they were actively opposing it. Mayor Bass even said, "We are operating based on rumors. I don't even know where troops will appear next, and the president won't take my calls." By mid-afternoon on Saturday, hundreds of protesters had surrounded a federal building in downtown Los Angeles. Standing guard outside were U.S. Marines with rifles, shields, and riot gear. And things escalated quickly. Rocks and bottles were thrown by a few in the crowd. Police issued dispersal orders and approved use of less lethal methods: rubber bullets, tear gas, and horse-mounted crowd dispersal. Eyewitnesses say people were trampled. Some were hit with rubber bullets, and chaos erupted. Meanwhile, a major constitutional question is unfolding in the background. A federal judge ordered the White House to return control of the National Guard to California's governor. But the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals put a pause on that decision, and a hearing is scheduled for Tuesday. Even more shocking, California Senator Alex Padilla was briefly detained by the FBI after trying to question Homeland Security officials at a press conference. This has never happened before in modern U.S. history. Senate Democrats are now calling this an abuse of executive authority. Now let's understand the legal angle. Under the Insurrection Act of 1807, the president can deploy troops without state permission in rare cases, such as rebellion or obstruction of federal law. But critics argue immigration raids and protests do not qualify. Many see this as a dangerous precedent. Historically, presidents have used this act sparingly. Eisenhower in 1957 to enforce school desegregation in Arkansas. George H.W. Bush during the 1992 L.A. riots. President Trump himself threatened to invoke it during the 2020 George Floyd protests, but eventually didn't. So, the current deployment is raising alarm bells. Is President Trump normalizing military intervention in civilian matters? The use of the phrase, "no kings," reflects a deeper fear of executive overreach. Protesters are quoting the U.S. founding fathers, flying American flags alongside Mexican and Central American ones, and highlighting LGBTQ+ and DEI issues, to emphasize that their protest is not unpatriotic, but a defense of democratic values. Meanwhile, President Trump supporters, including counter-protesters in Republican-leaning areas, argue that strict immigration enforcement is about national security and preserving American identity. President Trump, as always, remains defiant. On his social media platform, he said, "If I didn't send the military into Los Angeles, that city would be burning to the ground right now. We saved LA." He brushed off the No King's Day protest by saying, "I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get anything approved."
Several No Kings protests planned across the country on Saturday as well. What are your thoughts on those?
What do they call it? No Kings?
No Kings.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, "I'm not going to get this." A king would have never had the California mandate to even be talking to him. He wouldn't have to call up Mike Johnson and Thune and say, "Fellas, you got to pull this off," and after years we get it done. No, we're not a king. We're not a king at all. Thank you very much.
But critics say this isn't about feelings, it's about actions. Using the military on American streets, disregarding state authority, silencing political opposition. So what's really going on here? These protests are about more than just immigration. It reflects a deep divide in American society on democratic norms, on LGBTQ+ rights, and on the limits of presidential power, and whether America is still a democracy or moving toward authoritarianism. Protesters are saying that the moment we're too afraid to speak in public, tyranny has already begun. So it's not just about President Trump. It's about what kind of country Americans want to live in. So I guess from this, it's very clear that democracy is not just about elections. It's also about how power is exercised afterward. The No King's Day protests are a reminder that citizen action and state resistance are part of the American tradition. Whether or not one supports President Trump, it is undeniable that the U.S. is at a crossroads between federal authority and state rights. The final resolution may come, not from the streets, but from the courts, the ballot box, and the deeper democratic spirit of the American people. Hope you found this topic interesting. What do you think about this situation? Do you think President Trump has overstepped his powers? Or is he acting in national interest during a security threat? Thank you for watching. Hope you all have a wonderful day.